All right, here we go. Drive time, Tuesday afternoon. Of course, we are coming to you a little bit later than usual as a result of the University of Utah men's basketball team playing in the Big 12 tournament. It did not go well. 73-66 your final score. Utah actually made a bit of a charge in the second half to make it somewhat interesting, but the season ends for Alex Jensen and the Utah Utes at the hands of the Cincinnati Bearcats. We talked about it all year long. We'll get into it on the show today. This was destined to be a difficult year. I don't know that I expected it to be this bad. And, yeah, they went out swinging today. Terrence Brown, who was named All Big 12 honorable mention yesterday, led the Utes, as he did more or less all year long, with 22 points. Rough day for Don McHenry, kind of his sidekick. He had 8 points on 2 of 10 shooting. Keanu Dawes, double-double, 15 points, 12 boards. And a pretty good Sidhu Traore game with 12 points and 5 rebounds. But Cincinnati gets the win, and Utah is done. So the question is, what's next? How many of these players does the team want back? How many of these players are worth bringing back? Rough year. Utah finishes the season as the last-place team in the Big 12. Now we move on to what's next. BYU tips off in about an hour and 20 minutes from right now against Kansas State, amid reports that Jared Calhoun might be leaving Logan and Utah State to become the new head coach of Kansas State, joining Danny Sprinkle, Craig Smith, Ryan Odom. Feel bad for our friends up north, up in Logan, if this is the case. Nothing official. I want to be clear, there's some uncorroborated online rumors that Jared Calhoun has accepted an opportunity to join the Big 12 Conference and coach Kansas State. So busy day in college basketball in the Big 12. Oklahoma State and Colorado will go at it coming up. That game is at 7:30 Mountain Time on ESPN Plus in the Big 12 tournament. Arizona State beat Baylor earlier, and all the reports are that Bobby Hurley is done at ASU, but he gave some comments after the game saying that may not be the case. Who knows? Only time will tell. So Utah basketball gets an L today, and they're done. The Utah Jazz tried everything they could to lose last night. I went to the game to watch Jazz Warriors, and Will Hardy masterfully manipulated his lineup. But the Warriors just couldn't get it done. Like, they missed, I think, 7 free throws in the fourth quarter, point-blank layups, wide-open threes. And after Blake Hinson hit a three, I swear I noticed Will Hardy put his head down and walk over to the bench. I got to change my, as a result of last night, I've changed my take for a minute. First of all this is horrible for the sport. Last night was a glorified G League game with Kevin Love getting minutes. And it wasn't just the Jazz. How about Malevi Leones? How about LJ Cryer? Ultimately, Guy Santos, D'Anthony Melton, who's not a bad player, but it was a glorified G League game. And even though Keontae George and Bryce Sensabaugh were healthy and available, Will sat them for the stretch run and was doing his best to bring in like Oscar Tshiebwe and let's bring in Blake Hinson and sit Kyle Filipowski. Like he did everything he could. He played Cody Williams 43 minutes. My man tried his best, but the Jazz accidentally won a game last night, and it was a comedy of errors. It was hilarious. The New York Knicks are in town tomorrow. Going to run down to the Delta Center for that one as well. And the Jazz need to figure out a way to get better at this. If they're going to hold on to that draft asset, we'll get into some NBA basketball on the show today. But I know where you want me to start. Geno Smith, baby. Championship. Yep, that's right. Geno Smith is back in New York to play quarterback for my New York freaking football Jets. A really weird situation. UVU is currently being held hostage. Okay, we'll get into it on the show. You guys have probably heard the thing by now. UVU is leaving the conference, and they're being told that they need to pay $1 million in order to do so from the WAC conference. They went in front of a judge, and now there's a dispute as to what the judge filed an injunction allowing UVU, who would be the number 1 seed in the WAC tournament, to play in the tournament. And the Western Athletic Conference a few hours ago released the following. As of this time, Utah Valley University has not complied with the Utah's judge order that directs UVU to place $1 million in escrow with the court. The amount of their agreed-upon exit fee from the Western Athletic Conference, as the court-ordered preliminary injunction, is contingent upon that directive. The WAC Board of Directors has instructed the commissioner to plan for the men's and women's WAC basketball tournament without Utah Valley University, as it would be a member not in good standing. Here's where it gets wild. The conference will release new brackets if the university does not comply with the court's directive within the order by 5 o'clock Mountain Time today. The conference regrets that the intentional actions of Utah Valley University have caused uncertainty and harm for institutions, student athletes, coaches, staff, and fans across the WAC, including at UVU. UVU has 1 hour and 13 minutes to put $1 million in escrow if they want to play in the WAC tournament. I have never seen anything like this in my life. It's pretty wild. All right, truncated show. We'll go till 6 tonight. We're going to bring in Gordy Chiesa. Cannot wait to do some radio with Gordy. I used to do a lot back in the day. Now he joins Sean on a pretty consistent basis. So lucky for me that Sean's out of town, that I get to catch up with a man that, quite frankly, should be in the Naismith Hall of Fame for his contributions to the game of basketball. So we'll bring in Gordy today. And then Smitty. Sat next to Smitty last night. He was enjoying a lovely fruit bowl of some sort. Not exactly sure what it was. Some granola, some fruit, maybe some yogurt. So Smitty's going to join us live in studio, and we'll go from there. So Gordy Chiesa, Richard Smith, me, Spence Checketts. All of you, the great listeners, that guy who produced the Utah men's basketball game. You can break any of it down. You can break down Gino bringing a Super Bowl to New York. I have never seen anything like what the WAC is doing with UVU or Utah men's basketball. What do you want to take a stab at?
Yeah, man, all of the above. Not great for Utah men's basketball. And, of course, that's year one. So we give Alex time. We give him some grace. We allow for that here in this space. Geno Smith, I would have honestly loved that pickup any of the last 10 years until now. Not good anymore. Wasn't good last year with the Raiders. So interesting stuff there. And then, yeah, the UVU WAC stuff, while completely unprecedented and ridiculous. And listen, I hesitate to not side with our UVU friends in many ways because it's a touchy subject. The WAC has not been very kind in this process. However, the $1 million in escrow, you get that back if you win the court case. So don't allow the WAC to hold you hostage. Just pay the $1 million, go play the tournament, and then get back to court after this. I know it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that is kind of the simplistic way of viewing it. Let's do that and get to some hoops and let those guys go play for a spot in the tournament.
You just feel bad for the kids. It's a good team. They could win the WAC tournament, go to the NCAA championship. Bryce Larson, our buddy on our sister station from Bryson Benucci, has some interesting things that he sent over via Twitter that we'll get to. So Gordy Chiesa will join us, and then we'll move over to Smitty. But before we launch into the guest portion of the show, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks on a Tuesday afternoon, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 with Prize Picks.
Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5. Prize Picks makes every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. Don't miss the chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks, which is available and legal in Utah, so no worries there. Shout out Governor Cox. New feature alert, Prize Picks has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. Here's step one. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, we'll bounce around a couple of college basketball storylines here, and then we'll catch a break to bring in the legend himself, Gordy Chiesa. Round one, Phillips 66 Big 12 tournament, Kansas City, Utah falls to Cincinnati, 73-66. Now, Utah was up in the first half for a little bit. It was at one point there was like 3 minutes left, and it was 20-17. The announcers basically called it a football score. Neither team could make shots. The offense was stalling. It looked like it was going to be like first team to 50 get the win. Cincinnati started to turn it on a little bit. Cincinnati, borderline NCAA tournament team. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. I'll check the latest bracketology. They have some really good wins on the season. In Utah, when Utah played them earlier, that was a game I felt like Utah probably should have won. When you look at Cincinnati's body of work on the season, this isn't a bad basketball team. They actually beat Kansas at Kansas. They beat BYU at home by 22. They were coming off a loss against TCU. But Utah basketball finishes the season 10-22, 2-16 in the Big 12. They were the last place team in the Big 12 conference this year. And you just kind of have to wonder, for a guy that is used to winning, okay, and that's who Alex Jensen is. Alex Jensen was a winner as a player, as a high school player, as a college player, as a professional player. Alex Jensen has been a winner as a coach in college, in the G League, and in the NBA. How does a guy who's accustomed to simply winning digest a season where his team went 10-22 and 2-16? Alex is a winner. He always has been. So the question just remains, what is next? What do you do now? What is your economic system? How much economic support do you have? Can you hit the market now and go grab some talent? Because I don't want to be critical for any of the, overly critical to this young group of players. But we have to be honest about what we saw every single game in the Big 12. And quite frankly, most games all year long. I don't know that I missed a Utah basketball game. And I don't know that I watched the Utah basketball game believing that Alex had better talent than the coach that he was going up against. This, to me, is a talent issue and a roster that badly needs an infusion of talent everywhere. And the only way to do that in the modern day and age of college basketball, when you don't have a story to sell. And that's the harsh reality right now for Alex and the coaching staff. They don't have a proof of concept that Kevin Young has after sending Yegor Dem into the NBA and having A.J. Dibonsa sign as the number one recruit in America. The only avenue, you're not going to go into the living room of a 17-year-old's house or a transfer's house and be like, hey, you remember Keith Van Horn, bro? They're going to look at you sideways. You can't sell the story of Utah basketball past to recruit 17, 18, 19-year-olds anymore, right? Loved Andre Miller. Go look at his YouTube highlights, but that was 30 years ago or whatever it was at this point. So without a story to tell, without a proof of concept to offer, you have to hit the market with money to spend. And that's the bottom line. There's a period at the end of that sentence. There's a reason why every college basketball and college football coach in America bring up NIL and rev share whenever they talk. Because if you don't have it, you're dead. And I've been told by multiple sources that BYU paid more for one player than Utah paid for this entire roster. So Terrence Brown, honorable mention, all Big 12. Don McHenry moves on. He's a senior. Kiana Dawes, was a little bit up and down. I thought we'd see more improvement from Kiana this year. Sidhu Traore was just kind of the unknown because when he played well, they were in games. And when he disappeared, they would lose by 20. I'm not sure how many of these players are going to be back. But the issue is this going to be another complete tear down and rebuild? I mean, you need to play. You need to have players hold over so they can understand your system and understand what you're asking them to do. So, I have no insight as to how many of these players Alex is going to try to bring back. And does Terrence Brown want to come back? I think Terrence Brown probably made himself some money. If Utah basketball doesn't want to pay him, I'm sure another team will. The options to come back, as I see it, Terrence Brown, Kiana Dawes, Josh Hayes at times showed some stuff here or there. We finally saw Lucas Longarita, and he needs to get healthy. And ultimately, I think there's a lot to like about his complete skill set, but you could tell that he was just still making his way back. He had a couple of really nice reads today. I would imagine they want him back in the fold. Your seniors are Don McHenry and James Okonkwo. I think Kendall Sanders is a player you wouldn't mind having back. And depending on what the price tag is, I mean, Traore's a big-body kid who can guard and at times was knocking down shots. So ultimately, I think we need to see between 7 and 8, between 6 and 8 brand new names. 6 and 8 talented players. You got to improve on the guard line. You got to improve your interior defense. You have to improve everything. I mean, that's what happens when you're the worst team in the conference at 2 and 16. All right, real quick, back to this wild story regarding the WAC conference and UVU. Okay, so let's dig into this real quick. Then we'll bring in Gordy. So, as the story goes, UVU is leaving the WAC. And the WAC claims that if you're going to leave the Western Athletic Conference, the penalty is $1 million. They've been haggling over this for quite some time. Initially, like paying an exit fee to a conference if you're leaving prior to when you're supposed to leave as far as your contractual obligations, an exit fee is not all that uncommon. And $1 million doesn't seem like a lot of money in the landscape of collegiate athletics. We have to remember UVU does not have football. Maybe they will at some point. I mean, I believe right now they're the biggest school in our state, I think. But without those revenue streams, $1 million to UVU is not what it would be to BYU or Utah or even Utah State. Because we pontificated initially on the possibility of, dude, just write the check. So anyway, they went back and forth. They went in front of a judge who granted an injunction allowing UVU to go play in the Western Athletic Conference tournament where they would be the number 1 seed, the favorite to win it, and then go on to the NCAAs. And the opportunity for a young player or a coaching staff, quite frankly, it's one of my favorite things about the tournament. Watching a smaller school go on a little bit of a run and watching the lives of those coaches and players change in real time. You take a smaller school to the NCAAs, you win a game or two, guess what you can do? Parlay that into a contract that changes the life of you and your family. They're potentially removing an opportunity that could be life-changing for players and coaches. So real quick, a couple of hours ago, as we were all kind of getting ready for the tournament, the WAC sends out the following statement. As of this time, Utah Valley University has not complied with a Utah judge's orders that directs Utah Valley University to place $1 million in escrow with the court. The amount of their agreed-upon exit fee from the Western Athletic Conference as the court-ordered preliminary injunction is contingent upon that directive. The WAC Board of Directors has instructed the commissioner to plan for the men's and women's basketball tournament without UVU, as it would be a member not in good standing. And here's where it gets absolutely bonkers. The conference will release new brackets if the university does not comply with the court's directive within the order by 5:00 p.m. Mountain Time on Tuesday, March 10th, which, of course, is today. The conference regrets that the intentional actions of Utah Valley University have caused uncertainty and harm for institutions, student athletes, coaches, staffs, fans across the WAC, including at UVU. What the WAC is saying to UVU is, as we sit here today, you have 1 hour to put $1 million in escrow, or you can't play in the tournament where they'd be the 1 seed and the favorite to win it. So Bryce Larson, our buddy on our sister station, just lobbed this over to me on Twitter, and it is the court order. So I'll just read what Bryce sent over. Notwithstanding this being under the subhead order, this remains a directive and not an order. The very next line says UVU is directed, not ordered, to pay the $1 million to the court of security. The only order here is to bar the WAC from not allowing UVU to play. Okay, so it sounds like we have some legalese here. We might need to get our friends from Handy and Handy on the case. Friend of the program, Matt Brown, is reporting his industry sources are indicating that the UVU is going to pay this prior to 5:00. But I've never seen this. This is wild. A school is being held ransom, literally, by a conference with a time stamp to write a check for $1 million, or these young kids won't have the opportunity to play tournament basketball. It's just wild. We'll catch a break. Gordy Chase has seen it all in this game. I wonder if he's ever seen anything like this. So we'll do some college and pro basketball with Gordy. Then Smitty's going to be in studio. We'll go till 6 on a Tuesday. Keep it here on ESPN 700. We miss Sean O'Connell. He is out of town hunting gorillas or something in Africa. He'll be back in a couple of weeks. But I get to benefit because I did radio with Gordy Chiesa for years and years and years, and now he goes on Sean's show. But since Sean is out of town, Gordy is good enough to give us some time here in the afternoon drive on a Tuesday. Gordy, how are you, sir?
Spence, I'm doing well. Thank you.
I appreciate your time today. I wanted to start just with some thoughts on the month of March Madness. You know, you're one of, I don't know, very few coaches that have coached in the NBA Finals and the NCAA Final Four. For our listeners who do not know, when this month rolls around and the tournament is upon us, what are some of the memories that pop up for you?
One, there's nothing like it. March Madness is incredible, where it's the unknown, where the impossible happens. Three-point shooting is such a huge factor in March Madness. Who can make them and who misses them? And that's the beauty of it. That's just so many upsets. And every year and there will be upsets because there always is. And it's all based on three-point shooting, having good guard play. Usually speaking, in March Madness, the teams with the better guards usually win. And if you can make threes, it's even more dramatic. So my memory of that, yeah, I'm one of, I think, 7 people. Someone told me to do that once, go to the Final Four and coach in the NBA as far as the NBA Finals. And so it's really a small group of people. And I can say that both were amazing experiences. But March Madness, that's when the whole really country almost like bands together in brotherhood and sisterhood, and they have their pool, and they're all trying to figure out who's going to be the champion of it. That's great.
Let me ask you about the current landscape of a couple of local college basketball storylines. And Utah basketball lost to Cincinnati today, so they are done for the year. 2-16, 10-22, last in the Big 12. I know you know Alex very well. From my vantage point, Gordy, I don't know that I watched a game this year where I felt like Alex had more talent than the other coach. How do we get this thing turned around? What do you think?
Go to the portal. Absolutely. Don't recruit just high school kids. That's almost like yesteryear, unless you're high-powered, like, say, North Carolina or Duke or Arizona, places like that, where they can get the top players year in, year out. Michigan. And so Florida Gators. So if I'm Alex Jensen, is that I'm trying to really scour the portal as far as getting guys that could fit for you. And I would try to do it relatively soon. Because, I know a lot of times people say we're building for the future. But that's a tough thing because the future is unknown. And so I'd recommend that him hit that portal really hard and make the pieces fit. And the second part of it is that you have to go overseas to get big guys, then go overseas. Because historically speaking, Utah's been good with overseas big guys, meaning Andrew Bogut, et cetera, Hada Medelo, all those guys that have played for Utah from different countries. They've done a good job.
BYU will take on Kansas State in about 50 minutes from right now for their round 1 Big 12 tournament game. They'll probably handle them. Then they have West Virginia, who I think they'll also beat. After that, they run into Houston, and, of course, that's a good team with Kelvin Sampson. I think, Gordy, they're probably going to be a 5 or a 6 seed. We'll see how things kind of unfold. Give me best-case scenario with a team that's beat up, no Richie Saunders, in the NCAA tournament. What do you think BYU can do?
All right, secondary have to score as far as the other guys on the floor. And so in March Madness, just like in the NBA, with star players in the fourth quarter, Spence, they're going to double team A.J. DeBancer. So the question right now is philosophically, when he moves the ball, who can make open shots or strike dribble and attack the rim? So all the other guys on perimeter or in short corner spacing have to be able to score baskets, and that's the question right now. And we know about Rob Wright can score also, but they need other guys, whether it's inside, outside, or outside, inside, because they're going to try to take away AJ's tremendous play. And by the way, Spence, I would vote for him the first pick of the draft, AJ, right now, because he has an absolutely pro game. He reminds me, I've seen him play live. So he reminds me of a younger version of Paul George. He reminds me also of Brandon Ingram of the Raptors. He reminds me of Jalen Williams of the Thunder though a taller version. And then he reminds me of yesteryear of Tracy McGrady, where he can score the ball, he can pass the ball, he can rebound, he can bust out dribble and make plays for his teammates. And his shooting will get better, but he can create a shot against anybody, and that's a huge skill in the NBA.
Well, you answered my follow-up. I was going to ask you about A.J. compared to Darren Peterson or Cameron Boozer. You referenced DeBonce's shooting. Let me follow up with that because he's had trouble knocking down threes this year at about 31, 32%. But you think that's going to get better, yes?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. The more reps, the better footwork. Just by doing it all the time, you will get better at it. So shooting is one thing you can improve on. And I don't mean you can't. You go from being an unbelievable knockdown shooter, but you can improve from being 32% in college to 36% in the NBA. Yes, you can. It happens. Someday you'll be a knockdown shooter. That's the great unknown. But you can become a very competent perimeter shooter. Because, again, the better drive game you have in the NBA, the more they're going to back off you and dare you to shoot. And God forbid in a playoff game someday when you suddenly go 0 for 8 from threes because you really don't have rhythm or you didn't work on it enough. And that's when you've got to be able to, from day one, get in there into the gym and really shoot with repetition.
All right, let's move over now to pro basketball, the NBA, and we'll start in a vacuum with last night, Coach. And I felt like Will Hardy was doing everything he could to put lineups out there to give his team the best chance to not win. And the Warriors, they couldn't make layups. They missed a bunch of free throws. They missed a bunch of threes. And we all know what the deal is this year with the Jazz trying to hold on to their asset. But what did you make of what we saw last night with the Jazz beating the Warriors?
Hustle players, that all the Jazz guys on that floor really did a good job of they refused to lose. And again, so the players want to win, but I know from a franchise point of view and a long-term viewpoint, it's better not to win as much right now to make sure to protect the pick 1 through 8. So that's the big picture. But the players that performed last night in the game, they don't want to hear that. So last night's game, Spence, they only played 9 guys. 8 guys scored in double figures, which is kind of neat. The only player not in double figures was John Contra. But the two-way players, and the listeners right now, they're driving in probably in traffic, is that a two-way player means that they don't get a full salary in the NBA. The lowest you can get paid in the NBA is roughly $1.2 million. So the two-way players get paid $636,435, which is really a great salary. I get it. But in the NBA lexicon, it's really just marginal. So with that said, the 3 two-way players on the Jazz, Elijah Harkless, Oscar Tshiebwe, and Blake Henson, they play tremendous. And those guys prove that they can play in an NBA game, whether it's the Jazz or not. So the Jazz really outworked the Warriors. From the Warriors' point of view, Spence, for them it's devastating because they're trying to fight to get into the play-in tournament and get a home game on it. And so right now they're tied with the Clippers at 32-32 for the 8th seed. And so I didn't mention that a lot of players are out, and the reason why is this, Spence, all players are out in both teams. So the second you say, well, someone didn't play, you have to counter and say that also our guy didn't play or our guys didn't play. And so no matter what happens, you're on the court, you're trying to do the best you can, and that was the Jazz last night.
Gordy, since you and I don't have the opportunity to do this as consistently as I certainly would like, I want to take this space to ask you on my show what the Gordy Chiesa take is on the current state of pro basketball, whereby the most modest estimations, at least 8, if not 10 teams appear to be in a space where they're just trying not to win games to hold on to their draft assets. What do you make of this? How big of a problem is it?
It's a huge problem, absolutely. And I'm speaking from a fan standpoint also, besides a person in the NBA for the last 37 years, is that the fans pay unbelievable money for pro basketball, especially lower bowl. And for the listeners right now, lower bowl tickets, just in most arenas, that is really the revenue of the game night. So roughly speaking, there's between 9,000 and 10,000 low bowl tickets, and that is absolutely critical to every organization. All right, so with that said, the guy, Spence, one of our colleagues, say he goes to a game with his 2 kids, and he goes to 1 game a year, okay, and then suddenly the team is tanking, or worse than that, both teams are not playing their best guys. And so it's a problem from the fans' point of view. And then also part of that, Spence, a lot of our colleagues back east told me this recently, that part of the reason why that Adam Silver is so beside himself about this because of the betting line. Now, you and I don't bet, so I'll tell you objective, where, hey, wait a second, the smartest people I know in the world are the people that do the betting odds and Spence Checketts, right, in that order.
I don't know about that.
So the people who do the line online, wait a second, so they're favored by 3 points or 3.5 points, and suddenly, wait a second, in the fourth quarter, and people bet during games that they just say, for argument's sake, there was $20 million spent in the fourth quarter of NBA games, and some of those games the players in the fourth quarter didn't play, and it affects what? Vegas odds.
Yep.
And that's part of the equation right now, because now betting is legal in the NBA, which is perfectly normal, DraftKings, etc., all the partners, but they want to make sure that they're able to protect their interest. So it's a problem, and part of it is that. So the question always philosophically is that when do we start trying to win as an organization? Mm-hmm. That's the issue right now. Oh, we'll be good next year. The second you say that about your franchise, then you're assuming then that the other 29 teams are going to let you be good next year because now it's your turn. And it doesn't work that way. So it's a huge problem. I'm saying that once you decide to do that, then you've got to try to accelerate it. Looking back now, Spencer, I wish the Jazz would have done this 3 years earlier instead of doing it the last year and a half right now.
Yeah, because there's a guy that's playing in San Antonio that looks like he's pretty good. And I do want to ask you about the Spurs and Wembanyama in a moment, but one more Jazz-related question. And look, there's just nothing to ask you about the rest of this year, so I'd like to get your perspective. And it's hard to know because we don't know what the draft pick will be if they hold on to it. I mean, they only have a 2-game lead in the race, but I'm assuming they're going to figure out a way to do that. So they're going to add a piece in the lottery. So whoever that is, we'll assume that it's a good young player. Next year, Gordy, even last night, walking around the arena, talking to a lot of the staffers and some of the front office people, even the people that are working for the Jazz are just already looking towards next year because this has been hard on everybody. What do you think success looks like next season for the Jazz?
Play-in tournament.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. If their guys are healthy, and which they should be, the Jets have talent. Their front court is really has skill set, and that Keontae George is really a tremendous young talent, and so is Ace Bailey, and all the other guys on the team. So, Spence, here's what I would say: that here's the Jazz as far as who they drafted: Walker Kessler, Keontae George, Bryce Sensabaugh, Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, Cal Filipowski, and Ace Bailey. I would say those 7 guys, probably 6 of those players will be here. All right, so then Larry Markkinen, who they traded for, and Jaren Jackson, who they traded for, should be here. They'll be here, definitely. Those guys will be here. And so we're talking 8 players, and then they can bob and weave as far as trying to add people or keep some guys at the lower part of their roster. Remember, so some of those guys last night that played in the game, they can play in the NBA. But the question is, 1, how much you pay them, and 2, are they at the end of the bench? Can we win with them if there's a major injury? And that's, again, philosophically, that's the question. So the Jazz next year with normal injuries, Spence, should win between 32 to 39 games.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, they should. Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm. They do. And I'm hoping they can get one of these good young prospects and maybe even supersede that total. But I like the realistic number because expectations are important. Let me ask you, Gordy, about San Antonio. Whenever we're trying to figure out, okay, who is the next big thing in the NBA? You always try to look for something that's different, right? LeBron was different. And Victor Wembanyama is different in a way that I've never seen in my entire life. Now, you have forgotten more basketball than I will ever know, or any of us. So I have a two-part question. What do you see when you watch Wembanyama play, and do you think they can actually go win the whole thing this year?
When I see Victor play, one is that he's so unique player where he combines the skill set of a person that's, say, 6'6", with the unbelievable length of a Mark Eaton-type shot blocker. So he has skills on perimeter, and he can block shots, and also he plays hard innately. A lot of times, Spence, as you know, a lot of big guys, for all the wrong reasons, don't really play hard. They had this mandate called, I'm trying to conserve my energy so I can finish the game. Versus Wembanyama the other day, when that spectacular win that they were losing by 25 points, he gave it all. He was exhausted after the game. He was in tears of joy, and that just shows his personality of what he's like then. So Wembanyama, we've never seen a player that skilled, that big, and that team-orientated. So he's a generational, once-in-a-lifetime talent, and the Spurs are fortunate to have him. All right, this year, I think they're going to go deep in the playoffs, but if I was leaning, I'd still lean towards the Thunder, and I lean towards also possibly the Nuggets if they can get healthy.
All right, before we get to your list, I don't want to catch you off guard here, but the other night I was just flipping around watching some games, and a friend of mine, my buddy Brandon, said flip over to NBA TV, and when I did, it was Lakers Jazz 1988 Game 5, the Forum in Inglewood, California. Michael Cooper, Gordy, of all people, hitting the shot. And I chuckled as I flipped over because it was at the start of the fourth quarter, and the announcer said, John Stockton with his 20th assist. Stock finished with 4 assists. And you guys basically played 6 players. Scott Roth got 1 minute, but Thurl played 44, Ivoroni 14. Bobby Hansen, John Stockton, Karl Malone all played 48 minutes. What do you remember from that game and that series?
Oh, it was amazing as far as how hard the Jazz played. And it was almost like the coming out of John and Carl, as far as there were the young superstars coming up in the rank and file, and they went against the Lakers, the defending champion. And in that series, they gave it all. And the Lakers moved on to became champions, but that's when John and Carl became basically almost like household names to the rest of the NBA.
And it was Michael Cooper's only bucket of the game-winning jump shot from Michael Cooper. All right.
For the listeners right now, Michael Cooper was a defensive guy that had really long wingspan, and he used to try to attempt to, and that's the word, attempt to, slow down Larry Bird. And later on, they did a commercial together about drinking milk. And that was a really cool commercial back in the 80s and early 90s with Michael Cooper and Larry Bird drinking milk.
Do you remember who the leading scorer is for the Jazz that night?
Thurl Bailey.
It was Thurl. Good memory with 28 points. Carl had 27, John with 23, Bobby had 15, Mark had 10. All right, Gordy, hit us with the list. What do we got today, my friend?
Spence, today, because I know, Spence, you're a knockdown shooter. I've seen you jump shot. It's beautiful. But this list today is the NBA greatest off-the-glass bank shooters of all time.
Okay.
12.
All right.
Dozen. So it's off the glass now. All right? And bank shooting is a lost art. It's really a hip shot at a side angle. It's a shooter's best friend when you go off the glass from the side. Here we go. There's every play that I'm going to mention is in the Hall of Fame, and one guy will be in the Hall of Fame when he retires. And so it's 12 players total. Number 12, Rick Barry, off the glass bank shooter, Hall of Fame inductee, 1987. The 11th greatest bank shooter of all time, and he's still in the NBA right now, top of his game, Luka Doncic from the Lakers. He'll be a future Hall of Famer. Number 10 all time. He was also known as a finger roll, but his signature shot was George Iceman Gerving going glass from about 17 feet, usually from the left side of the floor, Hall of Fame inductee, 1996. Number 9th greatest ever bank shooter, Tony Parker from the San Antonio Spurs, Hall of Fame inductee, 2023. Number 8, Jazz Bulls, NBA Finals, 97 and 98. Scottie Pippen, inductee, 2010 Hall of Fame. Number 7, this guy changed the rules of the game. He used to have a step-back bank shot after posting up. There was nobody like him, including Wembanyama, as far as his not skill set, but as far as his overall strength. Wilt Chamberlain had this fall-away bank shot besides the finger roll signature shot. Hall of Fame inductee, 1979. Number 6, he's a minority owner of the Utah Jazz. He's in the Hall of Fame. We all love his game. Dwayne Wade was in the Hall of Fame inductee in 2023. Number 5, this person was in motion all game long forever. John Havlicek used to go glass in playoff games, in Game 6 and Game 7, and make them Hall of Fame inductee 1984. Number 4, he's on Peacock TV right now. We all love his game also. He's a big German as far as skill set. Dirk Nowitzki with that step-back bank shot off one-legged, which is unbelievable. Inductee Hall of Fame 2023. Number 3, he passed away, unfortunately, about a year and a half ago. Bill Walton with that bank shot posting up where you inside pivot Spence and then go glass from about 15 feet. Bill Walton, Hall of Famer, 1993. Number 2, one of the all-time great players in the top 10 of all time. He could score so many different ways. Tim Duncan, Hall of Fame inductee in 2020, and the number 1 player of all time. Please go to YouTube and watch this guy play. He retired in 1969, so I know back in 69, most people listening right now weren't even born, to say the least. And this guy used to go bank shots in playoff games in Game 7 with the whole series on the line and make all of them also. His name is Sam Jones, Hall of Fame inductee in 1984. Quickly, what about Jazz basketball? I listed 3 people, all-time Jazz bank shooters. Number 3, Mehmet Okur. Number 2, Bojan Bogdanovic. And the number 1 player in Jazz history to go glass in games is Jeff Hornacek. Thus, Spence, that's my list of today.
Brilliant, Gordy. Miss McGillicuddy would be proud, yes?
Yes, and Miss McGillicuddy, in case you're wondering, that was my fifth grade teacher my beloved teacher that we used to always, she used to always challenge us in the 5th grade, if you know what I mean.
Gordy, thank you, my friend. We'll look forward to having you in studio on Thursday, okay?
Thanks, Spence. Peace out.
The great Gordy Chiesa. Man, I miss doing radio with him. Porter, have you ever heard the Miss McGillicuddy reference before? There's a funny backstory here.
I don't think so.
So Bill and I used to have Earl Watson on our show every week. And this was, of course, a long time ago. It was during the Bill and Spence years and when Earl Watson was here. And we told Earl that we were going to have Gordy on the show like the next week. And he started laughing. And he asked us, he said, do you know who Miss McGillicuddy is? And I said, no, I've never heard of that before. And Earl said, none of the players do either. But Gordy was a master at running individual player drills because he has this great chest pass. Van Gundy has the same. And he would randomly drop in, like say he's passing to Earl to shoot some jumpers, and Earl was missing jumpers. Gordy would randomly pop in with a Miss McGillicuddy would be so disappointed, but he would never explain the context. So all the players were like, who is this person? So when we had Gordy in, we asked him about it. It became kind of a running joke, but great stuff. I am serious. Gordy Chiesa should be in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. I'm dead serious about this, by the way.
You go look at his resume, and, I mean, just look at the coaches that have – and it may not necessarily be his tree to his own as coaching trees go. There's influences here and there, assistants, head coaches. But, man, just the staffs he's been on, as you mentioned, one of less than 10. I don't know the exact number. I have to go dive into that.
7.
In the Final Four and the NBA Finals. To do it at both levels kind of shows what you're worth at that. And, yeah, I'm with you. Gordy's in my Hall of Fame. I'll at least tell you that.
100%. I mean, he coached on Rick Pitino's staff at Providence College. You go back and look at that staff, it's pretty wild. With the Jazz, 16 seasons, head coach for a little bit with the Magic. And again, as Porter referenced, 7 coaches in basketball history have coached in a Final Four and an NBA Finals, and one of them is our friend Gordon Chiesa. All right, we'll catch a break. Smitty, live in studio. We'll get back to some of the NFL news of the day today as free agency rolls along. The New York Jets have a quarterback. His name is Geno Smith. Keep it here. Tuesday Drive, ESPN 700. All right, we got a short show today. I mean, we are going to go until 6 o'clock, but we got going about 3:30, 3:40 after Utah men's basketball lost to Cincinnati in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. Took in a basketball game last night with my friend Richard Smith. And, Smitty, it's always fun when we can watch the G League, huh?
Well, Spencer, first of all, I noticed that when you walked in the building, how all the ushers cleared the concourse and stuff and made sure you had ample room to be able to walk through and stuff, because I know how those crowds follow you around whenever you get in public spaces. So that was nice to see, that they took care of you like that.
No, I appreciate you noticing that. It's the paparazzi effect when I show up to the Delta Center. I just don't really want my picture taken anymore. I'm kind of over it. You know what I mean?
And then when you're walking in and all the attention that's drawn onto the court with the G League players, that's another that puts it over the top.
I gotta say, I mean, we were sitting next to each other, and I started laughing as I'm watching Will Hardy masterfully manipulate his lineup to make sure that Keontae was on the bench, Sensabaugh was on the bench, and we've got Hinson closing games. We've got random G League players, 2A players closing the game. And Golden State couldn't take advantage. They were missing bunnies. They were missing free throws. They were missing wide-open three-point shots. I felt like the Jazz did what they could last night to try to lose the game. And I don't know for sure, but during that last set, when Blake Hinson hit that three, I looked over and Will Hardy, it didn't look like Will Hardy was all that thrilled.
He's stoic.
It's a wild thing to experience.
Well, what's interesting, too, about that game, Spence, is that Golden State was they had some guys out, okay? They didn't have a full force going, but they're in a position where they are fighting for their playoff lives.
Right.
And that's their goal this year. They want to be in the playoffs. Jimmy Butler got hurt, and Porzingis, they made the trade for him, but he still hasn't played yet. They're supposedly on the verge of getting him right. Steph Curry didn't play. He's been out for a little bit. But they're trying to make a playoff push and position themselves accordingly. They were shorthanded last night. And then on the other side, you have the Jazz, who are doing what they're doing and playing a lot of G League guy like Hinson, who a couple of weeks ago was not even on the Jazz's G League team. He was in Portland's G League team, and they brought him in, and they brought up Sheboy last night, and they play these guys in an obvious attempt, to not play their main guys, and yet when those guys get on the floor, Spence, and this is exactly what we saw last night. Those guys for the Jazz, they don't care what is going on in terms of the front office gyrations and moving chess pieces around and trying to manipulate the system and all of that. Those guys are out there. They're playing literally for their lives.
Yeah.
They're all out there playing, trying to prove that they deserve a next contract, whether it's from the Jazz or whether it's from one of the other 29 teams that are watching, paying attention. And so those guys are out there, and no matter what you draw up in the timeout and whatever is saying, or whatever the so-called vibe is around the organization, the team itself, those guys on the floor, when the heat is on, as we saw last night, down the stretch, back and forth, a lead, down 1, up 2, whatever it is, those guys are trying to make the right plays, and they're trying to show that they belong on an NBA floor.
Yeah.
And so that's where you get that conflict, and you get that yin and yang and the pulling and tugging, even within your own group, because what the Jazz are trying to do in terms of their record, and yet sometimes the players who are on the floor, they're not going to cooperate with that mindset because they've got their own agenda that they're trying to enact.
Yeah. And it's an excellent point, and one that needs to be underscored, because I think this conversation about teams in pro basketball being unserious about competing sometimes is unfair to the players. Because, look, the majority of the players that we saw last night, and the majority of the players that we'll see the rest of the way, probably aren't part of the Jazz future. So what are you doing? You're putting film out there for somebody in Europe, in Spain, who says, okay, maybe Oscar Sheboy can come play for us and we'll pay him $700,000 or whatever it is. You're playing in front of NBA coaches and scouts that, okay, you're not part of the Jazz future plans, Elijah Harkless, but we like that you play hard and maybe we give you a deal. So it should be underscored, and we need to be very clear, like, these players aren't out there sandbagging. This is the organization doing what they can to put talent out there that is lesser than in order for the results to go their way. Yeah.
And the players who you saw out there last night, those guys are look, they, as Jerry Sloan always used to say, hey, those guys practice too.
Right.
And those guys are trying to go out and do the best they can. Every time they walk on the floor, there's not There's not one player who goes out there to say, "Hey, I know what the organization's trying to do, so I'm gonna take bad shots, or I'm gonna throw the ball away, or whatever it is." They're out there because they want to show everybody who's watching, whether it's the fans, whether it's people watching on TV, whether it's scouts from other teams. And there were several personnel guys who were there last night from other NBA teams watching, and they're taking stock of all these guys as potential guys that they may have an interest in for their organization, come next year if that's the case. But the guys out on the floor, they're trying to play to the best of their ability. So what are the Jazz trying to do? They're not playing their better players, right? So they're not on the floor. They're playing the lesser players talent-wise, but those guys don't care.
Right.
Those guys are out there trying to show that they belong, and therein comes that funny middle ground, that gray area if you're an organization, because you can't tell those guys to go out in the fourth quarter and quote play lousy to protect our draft pick. Those guys are going to go out and play to the best of their ability, and sometimes what happens? A guy makes a shot like he did last night, and they end up winning a game, and maybe the organization shrugs or says, well, whatever, we won a game, maybe we didn't want to win, if that's the case. But regardless, the players are happy because you see the players out on the floor. When he hit the shot, they're all running out there, high-fiving the guy and high-fiving each other and all that. They're excited to win a game because they don't like being in a losing situation. None of them do.
Right.
And yet they've all been mired in this all year long, those who have been here. And, when they get an opportunity to win a game, the guys on the floor are going to do the best they can to try and do that.
Penny for the thoughts of Kevin Love. I'm watching.
It's a good idea.
You know what I mean? I'm watching the game last night, and it's Elijah Harkless, it's Cody Williams, it's Blake Hinson, it's Oscar Tshiebwe. Then on the other side, it's the Leon's kid. I don't even know, Quentin Post, Guy Santos. A lot of very unknown NBA players, two-way guys, G League guys, and an NBA champion and a former All-Star in Kevin Love. Now, look, he's still cutting a paycheck playing a children's game. So I'm sure he's doing just fine, right? And by all accounts, he's been a good soldier, and he actually has a relationship. My brother's clothing company sponsored him for a while, and so they seem to know him and love him, think he's a really, really good dude. But I don't know. I just wonder really what he's thinking being a part of this comedy of whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. He's obviously a long tenured player in the NBA, an NBA champion, Olympic player. He's just he's showing this year to me what I thought would be very difficult for someone of his stature, and that is to be the good soldier and just to show up and do whatever he's asked to do. You see some nights he has a cold, Spence, or he has something going on, so he doesn't dress and he doesn't play.
Right.
And then another night he's in uniform, but he's on the bench and he's cheering his teammates on, but he doesn't play. And then last night you have a game where they choose to put him in. So is that because they just need a body out there? Is it because they want a veteran guy out to help some of the younger guys, in certain situations, just talk them through it, and having a guy who's been there, out there before that, a teaching moment kind of thing? I don't know, but he seems from the outside looking in like he's handling the whole thing, like a true pro. And look, that's to his benefit, not just now, but down the road, because he's near the end of it. He's near the end of a playing career, and maybe he's positioning himself personally, to try and get on with a team, whether it's as a coach, whether it's as a front office executive, whether it's as a scouting guy, who knows. But if he's smart, and that's what he's thinking, down the road a little bit, then he's smart to comport himself the way he has been, to show people that, even though he's with a team that's struggling this year record-wise and won't be going anywhere playoff-wise, that he's still willing to do whatever they ask him to do, and be the good guy and do it to the best of his ability, there you have it. You know, whether they win or not, whatever. But he's really impressed me. Looking at him and just kind of keeping one eye on him every time he's in a game, he looks like he's at least engaged and trying to do the right thing and really caring about his teammates, which is a plus for him.
So I think it was Bam. It was Bam Adebayo after they lost to the Jazz, who during the post-game presser said, we need to find a way to win, and we really need to find a way to win when we're playing against teams that are trying to lose. And look, you referenced earlier, no Jimmy Butler, no Steph Curry, no Moses Moody, so 3 of their 8 rotational pieces.
And no Porzingis.
And exactly, Porzingis, which I have no idea what's going on there. It's another one of these like weird illness things. Hopefully he's okay. But yeah, so 4 of their top 8 players. So it's not like Steve Kerr was playing with a full deck of cards either. But I just wonder how the other coaching staff or team reacts when they're playing against these teams that aren't trying to win and they can't get it done. I mean, it must be just kind of something that scrambles your brain a little bit.
Yeah, well, again, they had Draymond Green was in there. He was playing. I don't think he was real effective last night, but he did a few things, and he got a technical, and they had a couple of things, brush ups, whatever. But he was out there, trying at some points, and they had him in at the end of the game, and they're trying to figure out a way to win. With second line guys, if you will, and they're hoping to be able to scratch out a win here, and it didn't work out because the Jazz end of the bench guys and G League guys didn't cooperate, and made a couple plays down the stretch, and of course the big shot, by Hinson there, and so those guys are trying to hold on to a playoff spot, or trying to at least keep their head above water until their guys get back. For them, hopefully, to get a little run under their belt before the playoffs hit them a month from now. But they're a team that's trying to position themselves, trying to climb up the ladder. I don't think they'll get up there, the top 6, so they'll probably be in a play-in situation like they've been the last few years, which is tough for them because they're playing several guys. A lot of money, and we talk about this, Spence, and looking down the road in the future for the Jazz, where they may be paying a lot of money to guys, and are you paying it to do just what Golden State is at the moment, jockeying for 8, 9, 10 in the play-in, and you're paying first apron taxes and maybe second apron taxes. That's what Golden State is in now, because Curry's making big money, Green's making big money, Porzingis making big money, Jimmy Butler making big money, and they're not getting what they want out of that, so it didn't work. So the Jazz are going to be looking at down the road here for themselves, especially this summer when they get to the Walker Kessler situation and what's going to happen with trying to re-sign him. That's really going to tell us a lot, I think, about the Jazz's thought process about this group they're assembling, and if they think that's something that's worth investing that kind of money in.
So after I was done signing autographs, posing for pictures, and holding off the paparazzi,
right?
I know it took a minute.
It was late.
But look, I'm happy to do it.
And that's always been one of your mantras.
I appreciate that. Man of the people.
Yep.
I had an opportunity. I wonder if any listeners think we're being serious right now. I had an opportunity to chat with I have a lot of friends that are over there still, that are working for the Jazz on the broadcast side, on the business side, on the basketball side. You can tell when you are actually there in person having conversations, nobody is enjoying this. To a person, they all basically said the same thing, can't wait for next year. That has got to be so exhausting. I mean, I was on the broadcast team when, Ty had taken over, and, there was this rebuild, and there was a couple of, decent years, but it was clear that they were going in a different direction. None of that is near what these guys have experienced over the past 3.5 years. From an organizational standpoint, I mean, look, I'm talking social media people, I'm talking marketing people, I'm talking ticketing people, business people, basketball people. When everyone knows what the deal is and you're continuing to experience getting your heads kicked in over and over and over, what sort of effect does that have on morale? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Oh, it's devastating. for the group as a whole, because all of those people in their various areas and what they're responsible for, in essence, are trying to sell the team to the public. Okay, whether it's selling tickets, whether it's selling advertising, whether it's trying to do social media to generate hits and looks and all that kind of stuff. All of those guys are trying to sell a product to people who, in general, know that the product isn't very good and don't know, if and when it's going to get better. But your job is to try and convince them that, hey, it's not the way it looks. It's really better than this, whatever. Again, in whatever area you're in. And that stuff is always part of it. Always goes back to the basketball group, because the basketball group dictates the attitude, the approach, the vibe, and the sustainability of the people who are in all of those business entities and are trying to promote the product that, most times, if you're winning, if you're successful, okay, people want to be part of it. But if you're not in that realm, and if you're getting the publicity or the attention that says that you're not serious about trying to win, and you get people like the NBA itself that comes down hard on you 2 years in a row with fines saying, hey, we know what you're trying to do, and yet you're part of the group that's trying to sell to the general public what you're doing and what the product is, and you guys should be involved with us and all that. That is a tough get, because you know what the deal is. And sometimes I think, I haven't been in their position, so I can't say for sure, but it would seem to me like it would be, like the used car dealer who's trying to sell the junky car on the lot and try to get rid of it, and you know what's wrong with it, but you're trying to convince the guy that, hey, Billy, I think this is going to fit for you just fine, when that's not the deal, and that wears on you if that's what you're doing day after day after day.
So the term culture is thrown around quite a bit, and I know that you've tuned in to some of the debates I've had with certain people about whether or not there's a danger when, again, as we've discussed, you're unserious about competing in professional sports, which is a wild sentence to say out loud. The danger of what that does to players, coaches, front office people, business, ticket sales, food and bev, merch, whatever it is, when you're part of that culture. And, a few different debates I've had over the past couple of weeks, and I'm not a contentious radio host. I like to just leave space and let anybody say what they want to say, and then just kind of, I try not to interrupt, right? Just kind of listen, as opposed to just attack people if I disagree. And I think some fair points have been brought up. There have been plenty of teams that have delicately held on to draft assets, utilizing certain tactics, and those things have worked out for the San Antonio Spurs and the Oklahoma City Thunder, and as you pointed out, the Houston Rockets in the 80s. This feels a little different because it's just so intentional, but you're a guy that for 40 years was part of Jazz culture. What sort of danger is there with this approach when it comes to building what is supposed to be a culture of winning and competing?
Well, with your players, first and foremost, Spence, winning is a developed attitude. Winning is a lot of the things that go into your day-to-day process of your player development, of your scouting, of your game planning, of how you approach these things. When you're playing games as a player and you're out in the middle of it, like last night, for example, and in the back of your mind that the guys you report to, meaning the coaches, the front office people, the ownership, all those people don't really care if you win, and in fact they'd rather have you not win. Okay, that is a whole different vibe when you're in the middle of the fourth quarter of a game versus someone like, for example, a San Antonio or an OKC at the current time who are jockeying for the top spot and the top seed to get home court advantage. Those games, they feel a lot different to the players because the players are in the middle of it. They know that a missed shot, an errant pass, something I didn't do on the defensive end may cost us a game, which is going to be critical to our overall goal and aspirations. The guys who are playing for the Jazz currently, they know that none of that really matters.
Yeah.
And so it's really a version, no matter what they say, of a glorified pickup game from their perspective. They miss shots. They throw the ball away. They don't do something that happens, that they want to have happen, and they make a mistake. People are just shrugging. It doesn't matter, and that's the dangerous part because winning is a culture, is something you have to build layer by layer, brick by brick over a period of time. You don't just turn the faucet on and it happens overnight. And until you're developing and have an attitude around your group that this game matters tonight, we got to figure out a way to win the game that we're playing that's in front of us. Until that is the deal every single time you step on the floor, then that is a tough get, because guys are going to be used to playing in a different mode, in a different mindset, a different vibe, and the NBA is tough enough to win, period, when you're trying, let alone when you're trying to turn your group from someone who hasn't been in that serious mindset to try to do that, the next day. That just is a really tough get, and I push back on anyone who says that, oh yeah, you can just do it and it's an easy thing. It is not, and history shows us how difficult that is for teams to win.
We'll catch a quick break. Coming up next, I stumbled upon a hardwood classic the other night, and I sent my friend Richard Smith a screenshot. The brilliance of John Stockton. Sometimes you forget until you start watching it up close again. We'll also do some college hoops. Utah basketball lost today to Cincinnati, round 1 Big 12 tournament. BYU is about to tip off in 2 minutes. And speaking of 2 minutes, UVU has 2 minutes to write a check for $1 million if they want to play in the WAC tournament. So we'll bounce around a little bit with Smitty during the 5 o'clock hour, but it is March, which means you're about to be asked to fill out brackets, even if you don't have any idea about college basketball. So we're going to ask you to do the same, but we're going to give you $1 million, not just to fill out the brackets. We don't have that type of money. But if you win it, one bracket, $1 million, it's the ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM $1 million bracket challenge going live on Selection Sunday, which is March the 15th, right around the corner. Sign up today on ESPN700sports.com, which is brought to you by Big Willie's, Game Day Men's Health, Intermountain Bobcat, Budweiser, the Intermountain Sportsman's Expo, Burger Fusion, and the Utah RV Super Show. All right, final hour of the program on a Tuesday with Richard Smith live in studio is next on ESPN 700. All right, 5 o'clock hour of the program. Tuesday afternoon style gets rolling right now. Smitty's going to roll with us till the top of the hour when we say goodnight at 6 o'clock. Think you could do 4 hours of this a day, Smitty? If I brought you in every day for 4 hours.
4 hours.
Yeah.
Well, let me see. I'm stumbling along and barely passing with a C minus.
No, that's not
on
true.
the 1 hour.
That's not
when
true.
you have me come in. So the 4 hours, I don't know, but that's seriously. I've done it a few times with you or for you when you've been out of town, and it's been fun to do. But I don't know how you do it every single day, and grind it out to the extent that you do with your enthusiasm and the work you put into it and stuff. And I sincerely mean that. It's really a grind when you're doing it every single day, and the way you do it, you get kudos for that, man.
No, that's kind of you. It's 20 years now, so a lot of it's muscle memory. You got to do the work.
Right.
You got to be prepared, and I try to have fun with it, but I appreciate it. All right, so I referenced this. The other night, as most of the games were over or ending, got a text from my buddy Brandon, lifelong Jazz fan. He said, flip it over to NBA TV. So I did. Start of the fourth quarter. May 17th, 1988, the Forum in Inglewood up to no good, California. And I chuckled because as the fourth quarter started, or a couple minutes into it, the announcer said, John Stockton with his 20th assist. And that was the Michael Cooper game. This was, I actually did a report for my sixth grade class on this series because this was kind of the first time where the Utah Jazz became part of the national NBA conversation, taking the Los Angeles Lakers with Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and James Worthy and Byron Scott, coached by Pat Riley. And on the other side was Frank Layden and John Stockton and Karl Malone and Bobby Hansen guarding Magic Johnson and Mark Eaton guarding Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And Thurl Bailey playing 44 minutes and leading the Jazz with 28 points. And basically, you guys played six players. Your guy, Scott Roth, got in for 1 minute.
Yep.
Carl played 48. John played 48. Bobby played 48. Mark played 37. Thurl played 44. And it was the only shot Michael Cooper made all game long to win the game. What's your memories of that game in the series?
Yeah, well, what happened, Spence, is that's exactly how you set up because it was a tight game. It was coming down the wire. The Jazz had an opportunity to get up 3-2, going back to the Salt Palace for Game 6, if they could have done that. But when you're doing your defensive rotations and you're talking to guys, you're making sure that James Worthy is covered. Obviously, you got to stay in front of Magic. You got to make sure Kareem doesn't get the low post touch, and so you're hedging. You got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and trying to split guys. And Michael Cooper is going to be the guy that you lay off of because he's known as a defensive guy. And if you have to give up something, then you give up a 20-foot jumper to him, and to his credit, he knocked it down.
Yep.
And that was a big shot because people forget. Spence, we come back, Game 6 at the old Salt Palace, and the Jazz blew the Lakers out by 30.
Yep.
In Game 6, and so now it goes back to Game 7 at the Forum. And a similar type game as Game 5, back and forth. And, Jazz had some opportunities in the last 5 minutes, couldn't quite get over the hump. A couple of key plays down the stretch by the Lakers, and they pulled the series out. But that was the time when the NBA was put on notice that the Jazz are here, and you're going to have to deal with them for a while because you had John Stockton in his 5th season and Karl Malone in his 4th season. And those guys are going to be here for a long time, and that's something that you're going to have to deal with, which obviously we saw happened in the decade of the 90s, where even though they didn't win a championship, they played for a couple of them. But during the 90s, most people aren't aware that the Jazz won more games than any other team in the NBA. During the decade of the 90s, more than the Lakers, more than Houston, more than anybody in the league. Didn't quite get over the hump, okay, but that was a group that everybody said, okay, these guys are here and they're for real, and we're going to have to deal with them for a long time.
You know, the other thing it brought to my mind is that was Frank's last full year as the head coach of the Jazz.
Correct.
And they were off to a good start the next season, 11-6, leading the division. And he stepped aside and gave up the head coaching job for a team that he knew had a chance to be really good for a really long time. Smitty, nobody does that. I don't think that's talked about enough. Like, obviously Jerry was ready, and of course Jerry did the Jerry thing, so we loved that. Nobody does what Frank Layden did in that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Frank would tell you, later on in life that that if he had it to do over again, he might not have done it as soon as he did. He had a good team. He knew the team was ready. With Jerry running the show, he felt comfortable at that. He was really getting tired of just dealing, from his perspective with the referees. That really ate at him, and he didn't like the way that he was reacting during games when there'd be a bad call or a missed call or something. We didn't. Obviously, in those days in the 80s, you didn't have the instant replay. You didn't have the look that the referees come over and double-check something now, during a timeout. You didn't have those things. So you just, you went with whatever the call was, and then you yell about it and you argue with it during the game, and the referees are up and down, and the coaches are yelling at him about the call 3 plays ago, whatever. And Frank just didn't like the way he was reacting in those circumstances, and it got too much for him, and he put that together with the idea that the team is a good team. I want to turn it over to Jerry when we have a good team, and Jerry can take them, and hopefully it progresses and it makes sense at the time. It was something, like I said, years later, Frank would say, I wish I had done it longer. I wish I didn't let that get to me, but at the same time, turning it over to Jerry at that point in time with the team we had, with the guys we had leading the team, with Stockton and Malone and the way they were coming along was just, probably the right thing to do at the right time.
One more thing here, because if you never had a chance to watch him, or if it's been a long time since you have, I was glued to the TV watching John. And here's why. Like, Carl's a mountain of a man and an incredible athlete, and it's easy, even if you don't love basketball, to see that guy's really good at this. Thurl's probably underrated as far as his ability to do what he did at his size. John's ability, the angular passing, the finding the lanes, they're sagging off of him. And this day and age, you're like, shoot the ball. And then John knew exactly what he was doing. He knew when to shoot. He knew when to pass. Bobby Hansen guarding Magic Johnson and he did a hell of a job, Bobby did. But the genius of John Stockton, I know it can't be encapsulated in one soundbite, but as somebody that watched that for as long as you did, it was just a reminder to me. Again, I chuckled when the announcer was like, 20th assist for John Stockton. He finished with 24 and 5 steals and 23 points, 8 of 16 from the floor, 7 of 9 from the foul line. Just what are your thoughts?
Well, again, you have to go back and look at the video and just see what was going on to be able to appreciate what all those guys were doing at that time. In that game, we often forget, this was unusual, but it showed the intensity and the height at which the seriousness of the game. We're talking about the current Jazz and how they're playing and so forth. But in that particular game, as you mentioned, Spence, Karl Malone played the whole game. Didn't come out for 1 second. John Stockton, the whole game. Bobby Hansen, the whole game. Thurl came off the bench to play 44 minutes. And so Mark Eaton played 37. So it's just those guys, the way they trained, the way they prepared, the way they attacked those games, they didn't want to come out of a game like that because it was too important to them, and they knew that they had an opportunity as the game went on and as you got into the fourth quarter and you got into the possessions up and down, you had a feeling that you had a chance to do something special in this game, and they had that opportunity. I mean, John Stockton getting 24 assists in 48 minutes, an assist every 2 minutes, in a game. Carl also playing 48 minutes. I mean, it's just the intensity of those games, the specialness of them, and then losing such a heartbreaking game in L.A., then coming back to the Salt Palace for Game 6, where everybody thinks, okay, well, the Jazz gave it their best shot. They're a younger team. Okay, the Lakers got Magic and Kareem and Worthy and Byron Scott. Okay, they're just going to close it out now, and the Jazz are closing out nothing. And the Jazz blew them out, won by 30 in Game 6. And then they went back to L.A. for a Game 7, which we all know, one-game series. Anything can happen. Somebody twists an ankle. Somebody picks up a couple early fouls, whatever. And that was also an exciting game, that the Lakers ended up winning because they were the better team. But it sure was exciting at that time to know that the Jazz had the situation where they were going to be a competitive team for a long time coming.
Yeah, and that was just kind of the indicator to the rest of the league, like, okay, we're here now. And they were relevant for a long time. It honestly still is wild to me. And look, Michael tore rings off a lot of people's fingers. Patrick Ewing, Gary Payton, Sean Kemp. I could go on and on. But John, Carl, and Jerry probably at the top. I'm stunned that team never won a championship.
Yeah, well, Spencer, they had several challenges. Really, I thought as you go through it, the decade of the 90s, as I mentioned, won more games than any other team in the league, more than Chicago did, more than the Lakers did, more than Houston, whatever. But in 92, I thought they had a very good chance, and they lost to Portland.
Yep.
And that was a series where David Benoit, who was an important cog for our group, missed a couple games because his father passed away, and so he had to leave the team and attend to family business, and that's just the luck of the draw and what happened. At that time in '94, they played Houston in the first round right after the culmination of the Jeff Hornacek trade, and they played Houston best of 5 at that time. They had Game 5 here at the Delta Center, and they were up by 5 with 5 minutes to go, and ended up losing the game primarily because Clyde Drexler went off and had a great last 5 minutes of that game, and we didn't have anybody who could stop him.
So that was 95, right?
That was 94.
94.
94.
Well,
not the first of Houston's 2 championships, 94 and 95.
Drexler was on the 94 team, too. Oh,
yeah,
okay, because the Knicks played the Rockets in the finals that year, and I remember I was hoping that it would be Knicks Jazz. I thought that would have been fun.
Yeah, and that was Houston, and that's what caused the Jazz subsequently to try and go out and get someone who they thought could play up against someone like a Clyde Drexler if that situation ever came up again.
To go get Jeff.
And no, they had Jeff. See, they had Jeff.
Oh,
Jeff,
okay.
Jeff had a hard time with Drexler,
sure,
as you can imagine.
as everybody did,
so what did the Jazz ended up doing? They went out and got Chris Morris.
Okay, yeah.
Was that a good move? Was that not a good move? Whatever. Okay. Chris Morris, 6'8", angular, athletic, okay. Chris Morris played a lot of minutes for the Jazz in the 2 NBA Finals. Okay, he was a contributor. Maybe he wasn't that guy that you hoped that he was, but that was the thinking at the time was we need someone in that circumstance if it comes up again and a make-or-break moment, we need to have somebody to go up against. So that was the decision at that time was we need someone like Chris Morris. Okay. There were a lot of voices in the room about, I don't know if he's the right guy or whatever, but we need somebody like him. So anyway,
and you got B. Russ.
And that's it. Well, we had Brian Russell.
Yeah.
Was a young guy on the team that we had drafted, and it was a second-round draft pick, and he evolved into, what he became, again, a starter on those finals teams.
Yeah.
at the 3 spot. Undersized guy really at that time, but he developed himself because he was a low post player at Long Beach State in college, and he actually developed into a serviceable 3-point shooter at that time.
Yeah.
And so you had him on one side and Jeff Hornacek on the other side, being able to take available threes, and that's what really opened up the floor a lot during those days, for Carl to be able to operate inside.
Let's just stay in the space for a minute before we catch our next break, and we'll do a little college next with BYU in action right now.
Yes.
It's fair to say about the Ostertag piece of that story, and I want to be fair to Greg, who in later years, he came on my show with Gordon Monson, our big show, and cried. He wept like a baby. I think to this day, he looks back on the way he handled that situation and wishes it had gone different. Because for people that, revisionist historians that just believe Greg was never going to be the answer, for a minute it looked like he was going to be. And I think that's what made it sting, that after he signed his contract, he stopped taking it seriously.
Well, first of all, there's a lot of layers to that. Greg was a very serviceable player. He added a lot to the Jazz during their so-called heyday in the mid to late 90s. He started on those 2 NBA Finals teams. He averaged, for his career, 8, 8, and 2. Okay, and so those aren't Hall of Fame numbers. But you have to remember, there was a reason that the Jazz grabbed him with the 27th pick in the draft, the year he came out of Kansas. So if he was supposed to be something else, if he was supposed to be a greater force in the league by most people's accounts, a guy who is 7'2" and had led, is the career block shots leader in the Big 8 and now the Big 12 conference for Kansas, a top flight blue blood program. That guy would not have gone at the end of the first round.
That's a good point.
Okay, so you have to put all of that into context. People knew that he had some shortcomings. People knew that there were certain things that he couldn't do. They knew of his, approach to the game, what his mental approach was. That, in my opinion, and I can't speak for Greg, would never do that, but I always thought that Greg fell into that category of being a guy who played basketball because he was 7'2", and everybody around him expected him to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens when you're growing up, Spence, when you're in junior high and you're in high school, and if you're the fastest kid or you're the biggest kid or you're the biggest guy on the football offensive line or whatever it is, when you're trying to establish your personality and identity as a person, then other people can formulate that for you based on what their expectations are for you. So when you're Greg Ostertag and you're growing up, I would guess that a lot of people threw that at him all the time, that, hey, you're growing up, you're the biggest kid in class, you should be playing basketball or whatever. And he kept growing and growing and growing, goes to Kansas, has the career he has at Kansas, and gets into the NBA, and maybe was a guy who was always playing because people expected him to play, and maybe it wasn't the thing he really wanted to do, but that's what gave him personal validation and acceptance by the people around him. So that's what he did. Didn't work that hard at it. Carl was, of course, one of his bigger critics, during his time about getting in shape, staying in shape, and what have you. But those are some of the limitations he had, and you had to work around those. And look, we had a lot of guys who were bits and pieces of the puzzle. But, when you had somebody like Stockton and Malone who were always there, always playing, had the skill, the talent, the fortitude, the drive that they had, now you can put in other pieces that maybe aren't complete, but can add a little something here and a little something there and try and put that whole puzzle together where you can have success over a sustained period of time. And that's what the Jazz were able to do with a guy like Greg.
Yeah, this interview we had with him was probably, well, goodness, been doing this show almost 7 years now. So probably 12 years ago,
Okay.
10, 12 years ago. And he was really honest, emotional, and admitted that when he realized how much money he had, he just realized that he was always, it's guaranteed deals. You're going to get paid no matter what. And to your point, I don't know that he was ever a hard worker, but he admitted that he didn't feel like he needed to put much into it because he already had his wealth.
Yeah, I would use the phrase I used earlier, Spence, about joking about myself, that Greg was always a guy I thought was only concerned about getting a C- in the class.
Sure, yeah.
Get a passing grade.
Right.
That's all I need to do.
Yep.
I don't need to come in and do extra stuff in the weight room. I don't need to try and be the quickest center in the league. I don't need to be the toughest guy in the league. I just need to be able to do the bare minimum that'll get me by, because everything else will take care of itself. And there's a lot of players who have that attitude, who don't put in everything that they could, and that's one of the things about scouting and about player evaluation that you're always doing for your team, is to try and get that kind of stuff figured out. Does this guy have the mentality, the mindset, the drive to try and be as good as he can be?
Yeah.
Now, we didn't know that John Stockton was going to be the player he became, because we didn't know that he had the kind of drive and the fortitude and the attitude that he wasn't going to give up in any circumstance. We didn't know that. That was something that the Jazz fell into, and Frank would be the first person to tell you, hey, if we knew John Stockton was going to be John Stockton, we would have traded up, to get one of the top 3 or 4 picks to get him. We wouldn't have waited till 16 to get him. And so there's a lot of those stories. A lot of guys who maximize their potential, and there's a lot of guys who leave a lot on the table. And your trick always when you're putting teams together year by year is to try and find the right mix of guys and the right guys who you think are going to give you the maximum effort of what they've got to try and see what you can do as a group.
Well, and again, the last teammate you want, if you are a C's get degrees guy, is Carl.
Yeah.
Britton, he tells these stories where a couple years Rick Majerus had his players go train with Carl, like preseason to get in shape. And Britt, within an hour, they're all puking, because they couldn't do what Carl was doing. But I wonder, before we catch a break, what was because the last coach you would want to play for, if you're a C's get degrees guy, would be Jerry. Yeah. What was Jerry's relationship like with Greg?
No, well, it was often contentious. It was Jerry trying to squeeze the last drop out of the stone. I remember one sequence in practice over Westminster College, the great Payne Gymnasium, where the Jazz used to practice in the 80s and really through the mid 90s. And one of the times over there, Greg, when he was younger, we had a sequence in practice where Greg's on defense. He blocks a shot. He controls the ball. He kicks it out to the wing. He follows. He runs in transition, trailing the play. They hesitate. He runs right down the middle. They get him the ball. He dunks. Okay. They sprint back. Jerry's yelling, "Go, get back, get back." He sprints back. The other team tries to get the ball down court in a fast break situation. He runs all the way down the court, blocks the shot out of bounds, okay? And Jerry yells to the group, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. What was that?" And everybody turns around. Everybody's wondering, like, what's wrong? He goes, "Everybody get in." And so he calls everybody in the middle of the court. He goes, "Oster, what was that?" And he goes, "What was what?" He goes, "What you just did. You block a shot, you trail a play, you get a dunk, you run down the other end of the court, you block the shot out of bounds." And Greg's thinking, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? Or that, is there something wrong with that? He goes, "See, you just made a big mistake." And everybody's puzzled, like, what is Jerry thinking? And he looks right at Oster and says, "See, up until right now, I thought that you couldn't do it. Now I know that you can do it. You're just choosing not to do it most of the time. And Greg is sitting there looking at him. He goes, you just cooked your own goose, buddy. Because now, from that point on, Jerry knew that he could get on him anytime he wanted about not hustling.
Yeah.
Because he knew that he had it in him. He was just being lazy a good percentage of the time, not having that kind of end-to-end action, from a big guy.
That's great.
Yeah.
Were you there when Shaq slapped him?
Yes. I was actually 10 feet away.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, we can't break now. Yeah. What happened? We've got to hear that story. Actually, you know what?
Oh.
Hold on. It's called a tease. Okay. Smitty is going to tell us about the time Shaq smacked Greg Ostertag. It's a true story on the other side. You can check out the 2026 International Sportsman's Expo, March 12th through the 15th at the Mountain America Expo Center in Sandy. Hundreds of exhibitors and experiences for fishing, hunting, boating, off-roading, RVing, and more. Text now to win tickets to 877-353-0700. That's 877-353-0700. Text Shaq slap tag, 877-353-0700. Morris Smitty coming up next on ESPN 700. All right, we'll call this our final segment of the day today. We'll take this right until the top of the hour and say goodnight prior to 6 o'clock. Kansas State just went on a quick 6-0 run to pull within 4. BYU was just up 10, and now they're only up 4. Hopefully that math checks out. 36-32 is your score in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. The University of Utah exited the tournament via a loss to Cincinnati earlier today. We'll get to some of those storylines coming up in just a little bit, but we left you with a cliffhanger, as we are taught to do in this business. Richard Smith is live in studio. All right, we're talking about some old school, we're having some fun with some old school Jazz memories because the current iteration of the Jazz, you know. So we're talking Greg Ostertag. So we were talking about some of the old school Jazz stuff, the relationship with Greg Ostertag and Jerry Sloan, and Tag not necessarily loving basketball, but being a big person who was encouraged to give it a try. And one of the pieces of Jazz lore, Greg Ostertag lore, was Shaq once upon a time smacking him directly across the face. You had a front row seat to that event. So walk us through what happened and what sort of effect do you think that had on Greg?
Well, first of all, I would say it wasn't what people would think in terms of a full, a big, punch to the head or a big fight. It was we were walking off. We had done our shoot around. The Lakers were coming on the floor to do their shoot around. The home team always would shoot around. We would always shoot around at 10 o'clock from 10 to 11. And then the visiting team would come on the floor from 11 to 12 and to do their shoot around for the game that evening. And so we were walking off the floor, and the Lakers were coming back on, and it just happened that we were coming from the same tunnel. So the guys were walking by each other, hey, what's up? Some guys would nod to guys. Some guys would, high five somebody, whatever, if they knew somebody. Some guys just, looked down at their shoes and walked past them and whatever. Because that was in the day, nowadays, Spence, everybody's is everybody else's best friend.
Right.
And they all got to stop and talk for 20 minutes and, hug each other and everything and exchange jerseys and do all this stuff. Whatever.
Right.
Well, back then, a lot of times you didn't want to look at the other guy even before a game because you were trying to get your so-called game face on. And so some guys wouldn't do that, but Shaq they had lost to the Jazz in the playoffs. This was the next season. We were coming in. They were coming onto the floor, and in the exchange, as I was about 10 feet away, we're walking off, and Shaq had pointed to Oster, and I don't know exactly what he said. It was something like in the vein of, "Hey, I got you," like I'm going to get you, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think Oster kind of laughed. Like almost laughing it off, like, whatever. And I think at that moment, Shaq just said, reacted like, you're laughing at me? Hey. And he just, just like that, real quick, just boom, just slapped him and happened to catch him across the cheek, mm-hmm. And guys, quickly got in between like, hey, whatever. But, and they both kept like kind of walking, in the respective directions. It wasn't like they stopped and were jostling and trying to go 15 rounds with each other. And, anything. There wasn't any of that. Okay. It was quick. It was a quick, literally a walk by. I reach out and slap you in the cheek. Guy, hey, come on. No, we're not doing that. And guys just kept walking. And it really wasn't that big a deal at that moment. The guy, a few guys kind of chuckled like whatever that was. I think Jerry wanted to know if there was something, that we needed to do with the league or something like that to report it. But it was really one of those just literal, quick 5-second things that happened in passing, each other in the tunnel there, coming off the corner of the floor between shoot-arounds. And, I think probably one of those things that creates a life of its own more than it really was at that moment in time.
Well, to that point, and one of the reasons I wanted to ask you is Carl went on a radio show. This was 2 years ago. No, excuse, this was 3 years ago. And I have the transcript in front of me. I just looked it up because I remember when the story resurfaced. Here's what Carl had to say, quote, "It ruined him for the rest of his career." Is that Carl just being a little bit hyperbolic?
Well, that would be, I can't speak for Carl.
Sure.
Carl, whatever.
Yeah.
And, but, I don't know. I don't know if there was, how much there was there to ruin from the get-go, but, whatever. That's Carl's, take on it. So Carl can, have his thoughts. And, maybe it was, I don't know. I didn't really think, Oster was Oster, and he was going to play the way he played, and maybe when they played Shaq, maybe he was going to back down a little more, because of Shaq. Look, Shaq was is such a big guy, and when he played, if he used to complain all the time, guys are hanging on him, and 90% of the time he was right. Guys, Jaron Collins used to do one of the best jobs of him, trying to meet him early. And I always thought that was one of the ways that Jaron was able to stay in the league as long as he was, because of the way he played Shaq, because he always would play him early, get up on him, get on his shoulder, not let him get his movement going, his shoulder turned. Was smart that way, would frustrate Shaq, but Shaq was so much bigger than Jaron. But Jaron would try and play him to the best of his ability physically, but a lot of it was the mental part of how he played him. But Oster, Oster had some great game in the big game that most Jazz fans remember. They got the Jazz to the first NBA Finals in '97, the Game 6 in Houston against the Houston Rockets, and the John Stockton 3 at the buzzer to win it. Greg Ostertag in that game had 16, 16, and 4. And so that was playing against Hakeem. And so he had a big game in a high-tension moment, and he showed that he could do those kind of things, when he brought it. And they didn't come as often as you would like them to. But that was Greg, and that's who he was.
Yeah, Shaq was suspended for a game and fined. Was that the famous Kobe airball series when Kobe was a rookie and he shot a bunch of airballs in Salt Lake?
That's a good question. I
think it was.
My memory is gonna fade on that. I don't remember if that was it or not, to be honest.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Let's do a little college basketball, Smitty, with the 12 minutes we have left. And let's start with the Utes. And, earlier today, it was the final game of the season for Utah basketball. They pulled within 4 or 5 near the end. They actually had a lead in the first half. It was a rough offensive watch. But ultimately, Cincinnati kind of got going a little bit. And Utah basketball exits the Big 12 tournament after the first-round loss against Cincinnati, 73-66. And I was talking about this to start the show. Don McHenry and James Okonkwo are really the two seniors who played that will not be back. You got Terrence Brown, you got Keanu Dodge, you got Sato Traore. I think there were some moments from the Lucas Langarita kid when he got healthy. Josh Hayes. Kendall Sanders is a freshman who I think can grow into something. Look, the fact of the matter is this, and I will cede to your expertise. I don't know that I watched one game of theirs this year where they had even close to the same talent as the team on the other side. I don't view this as a coaching issue. I know a lot of people are going to be frustrated, but this is the first year for Alex. What do they need to add? What are your thoughts on how they can just get back to being mid-table in the Big 12? No one's asking you to go win the thing. You got Arizona, you got Kansas, you got Houston, you got BYU, you got Tech, you got teams that are spending a lot of money. How does Utah basketball get back to relative competitiveness next season?
Yeah, well, it's the whole thing, Spence, and we've talked about before. It's just going to be all about the recruiting and about how they can get guys and how they're going to be able to exercise getting some guys through the portal. But also, I think they're going to try and get a couple of kids from overseas. I know we've reported earlier that they had one kid from Austria that they might have on. That might be committing to come. I think they're going to work that angle. They're going to work the portal to get some transfer guys. I don't think there's anybody on this year's roster who's a guy that you would say we need that guy back next year.
Even Terrence
to help us. Well,
TV, yeah.
You know, my opinion, he's a good scorer, but he's a me guy. This is my opinion. He's a me guy, meaning that he's always looking for his own shot. He can't go left. He's right-handed 100 out of 100 times. Defenses can deal with that easily. He doesn't give the ball up a lot. You know, he's always pounding the ball. You know, the ball dies with him. That's the way I look at his game. You know, that's I don't think. Look, you didn't win with him.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
while he's here. So maybe he comes back next year. Maybe he changes his game. Maybe they have a year with him to show him, you know, this is how you have to change what you do, whatever. I don't know about that. He has some talent. But again, your team didn't win. Your team struggled all year to get any kind of consistency. To me, it wasn't a coaching issue. To me, it's a talent issue. They have to get more talent. They know that. The Big 12 is arguably the top basketball conference in men's basketball. So you got to deal with all of those things. They're going to they have now under their belt a full recruiting cycle. So we'll see what they come out of it with this spring in terms of high school kids, in terms of overseas kids, in terms of transfer portal kids. So that's going to be interesting. The other thing that's going to be fascinating about it too, Spence, is when you talk about the portal, I don't know, but I heard last Friday the big meeting at the White House, and I heard President Trump say, in a week, we will have all the answers. We will solve all the problems of college basketball. We're going to get it done in a week. And when I look at my watch, a week is in like 3 days. And so, you know, obviously I'm being facetious, but that's what they said. So are they going to come out with some big ticket items that are going to change what the portal looks like, that changes what transfers look like? Are you going to all of a sudden have to have guys who have to stay at a college for a minimum of 2 years or 3 years? Are you going to go back to the old thing where a guy wants to transfer and he can't just do it from one day to the next? He has to sit out a year or wait. Who knows what's going to be on the horizon? But there are going to be, supposedly, according to the man in the White House, some big changes that he's going to be enacting and that are going to be coming down, and the NCAA is going to have to react. And so where does that play into all of this stuff that's going on in college basketball right now? We all know that it can't keep going the way it goes now. Everybody acknowledges that. That's why they had that big summit meeting. So we're going to find out how the rules are going to change if they do, and if it's going to be immediate, if it's going to be a gradual thing. And those things will play into how it affects everybody's recruiting, not just Utah's, but everybody in college basketball. But Alex and his crew have had a full year of recruiting now to be able to look at guys, how they want to structure their team going forward. And it's going to be interesting to see what they come up with in the coming weeks and months.
Well, I'm more confident now because I know that our president is a man that delivers on his promises.
Well, there you go.
And never tells lies.
See?
He's a straight shooter. If he tells you it's going to happen, it's going to happen. A man that ran on a platform of no new wars. It cost me $75 to fill up my car with gas. We don't have to go down that road. But what you brought up just it eased my anxiety.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
See, Spence,
thank you for that.
You don't have to lose any sleep tonight. Go home, relax, have a latte, fall asleep on the couch. Don't worry about it.
I appreciate that. There are reports, Smitty, and it's not finalized, but I'll tell you the people that are claiming it's done are people that are plugged into college basketball, that Jared Calhoun's going to be the next head coach at Kansas State.
Oh,
so of course
you heard that,
and it's look. I want to be, but this is a complex space for my industry right now, because these people that are saying that it's done are the people that would know that it's done. But of course, it's not official, so it's always hard. Jared Calhoun himself said it's silly season when talking about the rumors. I would just feel really bad again for Utah State. It's Ryan Odom, it's Danny Sprinkle, it's Craig Smith. Now, the culture up there seems to indicate that you and I could go coach and maybe we'll win 20 games. I don't know. And look, I certainly wouldn't begrudge, like I was asked on television last week, if Jared Calhoun is offered the K-State job, what happens? I'm like, well, he's probably making $800,000, $900,000 a year at Utah State. And the head coach at Kansas State probably makes $3 to $4 million. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're going to quadruple your salary and potentially create generational wealth, you're probably going to take the job, right?
Well, you have to first and foremost, as everybody in the business does, Spence, no matter how much you rail on camaraderie and for the group and the team and the school and rah-rah and all that stuff, everybody looks out for themselves. Everybody does. Mm-hmm. So whether it's the coach, whether it's the player, whether it's the athletic director, whether it's the assistant trainer or the equipment guy, whoever it is, everybody's gonna look toward a better opportunity for them and their families. If Jared Calhoun gets a offer to go be the head coach of a team that's in the best conference in the country, and his career path is one where he wants to coach at the highest levels and with the best competition and all those kinds of things, if that's important to him, then I would think that would be a no-brainer. Now, does Utah State come back? Now, remember, Utah State is moving into the new Pac-12 next year, which is a misnomer because it's not the Pac-12. I don't know why they're carrying that name forward, but okay. Mm-hmm. But they're going to be in a conference, with some heavyweights, Gonzaga being one of them that's going to be moving into that conference. So does your alumni group, does your school value what they're about to do in terms of switching conferences, going into a different alignment, going up with some other schools, with a few, quote, big boy schools? And could you think that, hey, we can be one of those guys, and that's how we get there, but we have to keep our coach, so we have to come up with the financial resources, the money to get him to stay here. I don't know if that's plausible in Cache Valley. I don't know if they have some big ticket guy who says, yeah, we got to play ball now and we got to do this. So here we go. I don't know that, but you're right, Spence. It's interesting to note that once Stu Morrill left, and the legacy he created at Utah State, and what a great coach he was, that they've had this succession of coaches almost every other year, and guys who have done nothing but win 20-plus games, and then they leave for a bigger job, and a new guy comes in, and he does the same thing.
Yeah, it's wild.
And it's in Logan, Utah.
Yeah.
And we're not in New York City or in L.A. or whatever. So, I mean, that's the fascinating thing to me. I don't know if it's the cheese in Cache Valley or the water or what, but they certainly deserve some kind of credit for just keeping that machine rolling however they do it.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. I'm looking around to see if there's any new news. UVU was supposed to write $1 million check 53 minutes ago to play in the WAC tournament. Nothing has come out, but we got a break. But before we do, Smitty, best case scenario, BYU, NCAA tournament, in your opinion, sounds like what?
Well, I think they're in a nail biter right now at halftime. They lead Kansas State by 1. I think they have to do something in this tournament. It's going to be sticky. They're going to end up, I think, unless they make some miraculous, 5-day run here and win the whole thing and to up their status with wins. They're probably going to end up at somewhere in the 7, 8, 9 seed area, which means they're going to have a matchup in the first round of somebody who's of a similar record, and then you see how it rolls from there. All
right, buddy. Hey, great to see you. Thanks for the extra time. Always appreciate it. Okay,
Spence, anytime.
All right, Porter. Before we say goodnight, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of the program?
Yeah, on a Wednesday edition of The Drive, halfway through your work week, one day closer to the weekend, Pablo Mastroeni talking some Real Salt Lake and more. Tim McMahon stops by for your NBA Daily Assist and talking some hockey. One Adrian Denny will stop by talking some Utah Mammoth. And then, hey, a guy that I'm sure you are familiar with, a comedian, impressionist, and a big sports fan, Frank Caliendo is going to join the program.
Oh, really? I actually have interviewed Frank before. It's a fun interview, so we'll enjoy that. All right, we'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to two basketball legends, Gordy Chase and Richard Smith. If you missed any sound today, website is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store for free. And then for what we do in our space, our podcast page is there for you. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. So subscribe, rate, review, follow along, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars you can. If you like what we do, it helps out the show. For Porter, I'm Spence. Say goodnight. Have a great Tuesday evening. We'll talk to you on a jam-packed Wednesday edition of The Drive. And always you can catch that right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700.